Welcome to week 10. This is a really long chapter with a lot of important stuff in it. So let's make sure we spend plenty of time to reading and studying the material, as well as participating in the forum throughout the week. I opened my PowerPoint with a question about Congress's role in intelligence oversight. What role does politics play in congressional decisions about what they should investigate and what should not be subject to oversight hearings? Clearly, partisanship plays a significant role in these kinds of decisions, but there is a deeper issue, a potential for Congress to become complicit in the intelligence failures and scandals of the executive branch because they fail to aggressively hold an administration and the intelligence community to account. Have there been any instances where intelligence failures created an electoral threat for the majority party? Lowenthal notes that the executive branch has a number of advisory boards who are responsible for ensuring that the president receives expert advice over and above what the intelligence community might provide. How effective are these advisory boards? Lowenthal notes an instance where one eminence grise, which is a French word for wise old man, effectively, on George W. Bush's President's Intelligence Advisory Board, named Brent Scowcroft, whose name should be familiar to everybody, who publicly differed with his decision to invade Iraq in real time and was subsequently replaced. What does that suggest to you about the ability of these kinds of advisory boards to speak truth to power? Another important avenue for oversight are the so-called independent commissions, the 9/11 Commission being a prominent example. One of the problems with these independent commissions is the tendency to play to the lowest common denominator. It doesn't strike me as accidental that none of the commissions that investigated the period prior to the invasion of Iraq was willing to publicly conclude that the Bush administration coerced the intelligence community to produce intelligence it could use to justify toppling Saddam Hussein's regime. I think there's a huge amount of evidence suggesting precisely that, but you'll never get a bipartisan commission to reach that conclusion because the party of the president is never going to sign off on that kind of a report. An important part of the oversight process is the role that inspector generals play within the executive branch. Just about every agency within the intelligence community has an inspector general's office, and their job is basically to scrutinize agencies' activities and to ensure that an agency is acting within the law. In a way, IGs kind of play the role that you see portrayed in cop shows by those scary internal affairs guys. And IGs are about as popular as internal affairs investigators are among cops, which to some extent kind of comes with a job. Very similar to inspector generals is the role that the Office of Management and Budget, at least potentially, can play within the executive branch more broadly. Most people know that the OMB is responsible for putting together the president's budget, but they also have the power to track spending rates, and there are OMB program managers embedded throughout the intelligence community, and they have the ability to wield a lot of influence over intelligence spending, mostly in a constraining capacity. I'd be curious to know whether there's any news as to whether the intelligence community as a whole has developed strong feelings about Mick Mulvaney, who, he's the current OMB director, and as a member of Congress developed a reputation as one of the most ideologically conservative Republicans on the Hill. It shouldn't be surprising that the bulk of this chapter is devoted to congressional oversight. The constitutional origins of Congress's oversight authority are there to be memorized if you want to. I'm more interested in the various kind of levers of power Congress can pull on in order to hold executive branch agencies and the intelligence community responsible. First, what kinds of actions are most likely to cause Congress to want to exercise its oversight authority to begin with? What are the consequences of Congress punishing the intelligence community, for example, through budget cuts? How far can the Senate go in using its advice and consent power over presidential nominations within the intelligence community? A lot of times what this means is that Congress has potential power, but that power comes with a price when they wield it too aggressively. So when you add up the different things Congress can do to exert oversight authority over the intelligence community, you have to conclude that Congress was designed constitutionally to be a co-equal branch of government, and that Congress can, if properly motivated, effectively check presidential and executive branch abuses of authority. The operative word, of course, is properly motivated, as we're seeing in contemporary time. Often in times of unified government, Congress simply lacks motivation to hold the executive branch to account for abuses of authority. The issue of prior notice to Congress on covert actions, for example, is a very interesting issue. The executive branch is generally opposed to giving Congress prior notice on the grounds that Congress is such a leaky place. Intuitively, do you think that Congress is more likely to leak than the executive branch? Is that what Lowenthal thinks? Why or why not? The distinctive nature of the House and Senate Select Committees on Intelligence is also, to me, a really interesting issue. They don't share the same kind of oversight mandates, and one is highly partisan, the House, while the other one is generally fairly bipartisan. What do you think about the current condition of the respective committees, especially with regard to investigating Russian meddling in our elections? Do you think that the House Intel Committee is doing a bang-up job, or would you rather serve on the Senate Intel Committee? The last issue I want to touch on is the judiciary's role in oversight through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act's FISA courts, which basically reviews warrant requests from the intelligence community. Broadly speaking, is this sufficient oversight to ensure that American civil liberties are being protected? And is that is the oversight community itself at risk of converting itself into the kinds of secret police forces that authoritarian regimes routinely resort to? So, as I said, there's a lot to discuss this week. Let's get to it.